Shoulder strength and stability. This is going to be super important for all of your calisthenics drills, because without the shoulder strength and stability, you're essentially not going to be able to perform and progress the movements that we need. So the movements that we're going to be looking at are protraction, retraction, elevation, depression, and external rotation. And I'm going to show you drills for each of those. Now, one thing that I'm going to assume prior to us going through these drills is that you have the mobility to get into the positions that we need to. That being said, I will cover mobility for each of these movements in another video. So without further ado, let me show you the first move. So the first move that we're going to be doing is protraction. So the obvious muscles that are going to be involved in this are going to be the pecs and the deltoids, but the less obvious muscles are going to be the serratus anterior, which originates from the rib cage and attaches into the medial side of the scapula, and the pec minor. And so the movement that I'm going to go through today is the scap push-up. So what you want to do, hands directly under the shoulders, elbow pits forwards like so. Now you want to start with your shoulders retracted. So just dip your chest down like so. And then from here, and we're going to do this on our knees to begin with, we just want to push through the hands and bring the shoulder blades. Just imagine the shoulder blades coming apart and rolling down around to the shoulders. Okay, you want to imagine that they're just falling away from the spine. Now what we don't want is to round out the back too much. We're not doing a cat-cow. We're just pushing as hard as we can like so. So if I was you, I would just dip the chest down, move slowly into it, hold the stretch at the top before you go back down for 6 to 8 reps. Now you might find this supported version pretty easy, in which case you can go into a plank like so, dip down into retraction, elbows stay forwards, push the shoulder blades apart into that protracted position before you come back down like so. So they're your scap push-ups. I'd recommend that you do 6 to 8 reps, 2 to 3 sets. This doesn't need to be very fatiguing, so you can leave 4 to 5 reps in the tank, but you do need to begin through that movement slowly and effectively to really feel yourself moving from retraction into protraction. The next one we're going to work on is retraction. Ultimately, this is going to be very useful if you ever progress to a front lever. And so the muscles that we're training here are going to be the rhomboids, but also because we're going to be depressing the scapula slightly, we're going to be targeting the lower traps as well. So very simple in terms of execution. You want to get a bar to around about rib cage height. Grab the bar, shoulder width apart or slightly wider than shoulder width. Walk into position. And then from here, you can go into protraction so that the shoulder blades come forwards. And then you want to just focus on drawing the shoulder blades together whilst keeping the elbow pits up before you drop back down into protraction. Now you don't want to drop the hips back down. You do want to keep the hips up, but we're going to pull in nice and tight, hold so that you can really feel what that retracted position feels like before you stretch back and in. And so once again, 6 to 8 reps, RIR, 4 to 5, 2 to 3 sets. That's going to be a great place to start with in terms of developing this attribute of shoulder strength and stability. So the next move we're looking at is depression. So depressing the scapulas, bringing them all the way down the back as far as we can get them. And this is really going to stimulate the lower traps in particular, which is a muscle that commonly isn't trained so much. And the first move that we're going to do for depression, because there's going to be another one that we'll do next, is going to be the dip shrug. This is going to be more focused on pushing, and this is going to be an essential prerequisite for you doing something like the dip. So how do we perform this? Basically, get yourself set up with some dip bars. Come into position like so. You can even do this supported with your feet on the floor, but I'm going to do this unsupported. Roll your elbow pits forwards. Then you want to drop into elevation. So this is the opposite movement. It's always good to start in the opposite movement before you slowly push yourself into depression, which is the shoulder blades all the way down the back, push nice and tight, and then slowly dip back down into elevation, and then push yourself hard again, as hard as you can, into depression, and then back down. That's going to be a very important movement to bring about strong, stable shoulders. We're really stimulating the lower traps on that one. And as mentioned, it's going to be very important in transferring to many pushing movements, particularly dips. So now we're looking at depressing the scapulars from a pulling motion, and more specifically, pulling vertically. So we're going to be doing a movement called the active hang. This is going to set you up nicely for doing chest to bar pull-ups, and ultimately is going to transfer to being able to do a front lever should you decide to progress your calisthenics journey to unlocking that skill. And so very simply, what we're going to do, get yourself into a dead hang. Once you're in a dead hang, your shoulders are already fully elevated, so that's a good starting position to come from. Then keep the body locked in a hollow body, and then what I want you to focus on is driving the shoulder blades down the back and let the chest go up slightly before you come back down. And what I mean by the chest go up slightly is as the chest comes up, you're kind of extending the spine slightly, which allows the shoulder blades to draw down the back even further. So if I show you that again, nice tight grip on the bar, down in, so shoulders are currently elevated, pull hard, chest up, activating the lower traps, rear delts, rhomboids, and back down. And the reason why I want you to kind of arch slightly is because essentially that's the first part of the front lever. When you start to do front lever, in fact I can maybe just show you that now. So in this position here, I'm locked. And that's what that movement would ultimately transfer to. So active hang is the next drill to help you depress your scapulars as much as possible, which is going to transfer to your pull-ups, front levers. Let me show you the next drill. So the next move that we're going to do is elevation. This one's going to help transfer to your handstands, and this one can be a little bit awkward to train, especially if you were to do it on the floor. It can be a little bit too demanding. So what I'm doing is I'm setting this up so that you can get yourself into a horizontal position, and that's going to make it a lot less demanding. But essentially the movement that we're looking for is shoulder blades up to the ears. And what I want you to do is get a bar, or even a wall might be helpful here. Set this at a rib cage height or maybe a little bit lower. Then what I'm going to do is push hard into the bar or wall or whatever it is. Hinge down so that your chest is parallel, and so if I was to look in the mirror to the side, there's a nice flat line from hands all the way to my hips. And then from here, I'm going to move back a little bit actually, just to create some space. From here, push hard, lock like so, and then release. So you want to push as hard as you can, feel the shoulder blades come up the back, and then just release by just relaxing that push. You're not going to be able to just move directly into a depressed position from here. It's going to be very difficult. So just focus on a nice big push before you just release the push. Push again and release the push. So that's going to be the first drill that I'll give you for that. So this move is going to be a little bit more specific. Again, we're going to be at a slight angle, because if we were to do this in a handstand, it'll be very difficult for a lot of us. So what I want you to do, hands on the floor, and you're going to get yourself into an A-frame. So this is basically an A-frame shrug. So if you've got the flexibility to get into a nice A-frame, I really don't, but if you do, that's going to make this better. But you just want to drive your hips to the ceiling and try and bring your chest towards your knees. And then from here, you're just going to push through the hands and the fingertips into elevation before you drop back down. Push again and drop back down. The most important thing is obviously just shrugging hard into the floor, pushing as hard as you can, get that elevation before you come back down. And so that's going to be, again, another important movement that's going to, this one in particular will transfer to your handstands and handstand push-ups. Let's get into our final move. So the next component of shoulder strength and stability is going to be the ability to externally rotate the shoulders. So bringing the shoulder blades back and bringing the anterior side of the humerus to translate back and round. And so this is essentially the movement that we're going for. And to facilitate this, purely because it's going to be more transferable to any form of calisthenics movement that we do, is going to be TRX face pull. You can even use rings for this. And so what I'm going to do, grab TRX handles, and then we're going to get into position. So dig the heels in, hips up, and then I'm going to start in this position here. So essentially fully, almost you could say internally rotated. Then from there, I'm going to pull the hands towards the temples in a kind of a Y shape, but keeping the elbows high. And I want to squeeze the shoulder blades together here before I release. Really important to go through these movements slowly, because you really want to feel yourself moving into those positions, not rushing, holding at the top for a couple of seconds before you go back down. And that's going to be the way in which we achieve our external rotation of the shoulders before we come back down, okay? Just a quick recap. For each of those movements, I'd recommend that you do 6 to 8 reps, 2 to 3 sets, RIR 4 to 5. We really don't need to push it too hard. We just need to feel the movement, but we don't want to fatigue, because these will typically be used as warm-ups for skills that we're going to be training later on in our sessions, whether that's the handstand, front lever, pull-up, dips, handstand push-up, L-sit. That being said, guys, hopefully you found that useful. Hopefully you understand the importance of those movements and how they transfer to you doing all the skills that I've mentioned. If you have any questions or comments, do let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.